Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Sentinel Report. I'm your host, Alex Newman. It is December 8th, 2025, and we've got some very special guests coming up for you. It turns out the holdovers from the Biden regime in the Trump administration are meddling in Latin American politics to help socialists. I wish it weren't true, but that's what our guest, Congresswoman Maria Salazar, has to say. That and much more. We also have the great Stephen Gardner, one of the most popular MAGA talk show hosts in the world, joining us to break down the really interesting comments by Nicole Shanahan, a progressive, saying that young American progressives are being manipulated like Chairman Mao manipulated the revolutionary youth to bring down that country. Appalling. And as always, Stephen and his insightful comments will be a big blessing, I think, to all of us. And then we have one of the top attorneys in the pro-life movement in the Christian world, Bradley Pierce. He is an incredible lawyer. He's also with Heritage Defense. And folks, did you know that more than 1/3 of American children are going to be involved in a CPS investigation before they turn 18? Yeah. And you need to know what to do in those cases, especially if you have children or grandchildren. First, before we get to our news segment, big things happening in Europe right now with censorship, with Trump administration. The EU is coming after Elon Musk. But before we get to all of that, we've got a word from the Word. This comes out of Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6. It says, "For a child will be born to us, a son will be given to us, and the government will rest on his shoulders. And his name will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Eternal Father, Prince of Peace." Wonder who that could be talking about. Oh, yeah, coming soon. Christmas. I'm sure you're already getting into the Christmas spirit. Before we get to the news segment, folks, I do want to tell you about our friends over at Refining Rhetoric. Robert Borton's extraordinary individual. He actually leads the largest homeschooling network in the world, Classical Conversations, partners of ours for a long time. It's actually where I have my children enrolled. And Robert Borton's has this wonderful podcast. I've talked about it here before. It's called Refining Rhetoric. You can find it at refiningrhetoric.com. And I encourage you to do so. Commentary from some of the greatest and brightest minds in our country today, even internationally, talking about the issues that really matter. So go check it out, refiningrhetoric.com. Also, if you're not familiar with Classical Conversations yet, go check it out, classicalconversations.com/LSM. If you have children in your life that you love, whether they're your own, your grandchildren, your nephews, you want to check it out. Going over to the news segment, folks, we have a lot happening in the world today, but I want to start with an issue that I think should really concern all of us. We'll talk a little bit with Congresswoman Maria Salazar about this in a moment, but the European Commission has just announced a $140 million fine against X, Twitter. This is Elon Musk's company. And the reason why is that they won't censor enough. So Secretary of State Marco Rubio says this is an attack on all tech platforms, the American people, by foreign governments. He says the days of censoring Americans online are over. And really incredible that you have a pseudo-democratic European superstate. I call it the European Soviet. I got that idea from Mikhail Gorbachev. It's just incredible. But I love how Elon Musk responded to this. He says, fine, taking off the gloves. He says the EU should be abolished and sovereignty returned to individual countries so that governments can better represent their people. Wowzers. I happen to agree with Elon Musk. I think the EU is an abomination. But other American officials are getting involved as well. This is really interesting, from the U.S. ambassador to the European Union, Andrew Puzder, a very prominent individual. And I hope the EU is taking note. And we had another senior U.S. official, U.S. Undersecretary of State Sarah B. Rogers. She was actually in Europe when she made this short little video. We're not going to show it to you in the interest of time, but she says, I'm traveling in Europe on a diplomatic passport, so I thought I'd take this opportunity to say a few things that ordinary Europeans and Brits can't. She's right. She mentioned several instances of Europeans who've been prosecuted by their own governments for perfectly normal speech, for perfectly reasonable things. Not that saying unreasonable things ought to result in prosecution, but this is incredible, folks. Now, the Undersecretary of State, Secretary of State Sarah Rogers, she can say those things because she's on a diplomatic passport. She can't be arrested. But what about our European friends who now are not able to even speak freely, who are being arrested for tweets and Facebook posts? It's really crazy. And the Trump administration kind of hit on this. There was a really interesting new national security strategy document where they warned that Europe faces civilizational erasure They say that if current trends continue, Europe is going to be unrecognizable in 20 years or less. And it says the economic issues are eclipsed by a real and more stark prospect of civilizational erasure. The document says it's far from obvious whether certain European countries will have economies and military strong enough to remain reliable allies. Wow. Accuses the EU and other transnational bodies of carrying out activities that it says undermine political liberty and sovereignty. Says these migration policies are creating strife, and that issues like censorship of free speech, suppression of political opposition, cratering birth rates, and the loss of national identities and self-confidence are going to be a problem for generations to come. Joining us to discuss all this and more is Andrew Muller, Chief of Operations here at Liberty Sentinel Media. Andrew, you've been to Europe. You've been to Brussels, where Belgians are a very small minority in their own capital city. The same is happening all across other Western European capitals. I looked at this national security strategy document, and it was interesting. No mention of communism, no mention of the CCP, no mention of Islamic terrorism and Islamization, but they do highlight, it seems to me, some really important points here about what mass migration has done to Europe. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think the bottom line is, Alex, is that it's important to recognize that nations are as valuable as their culture, their heritage, their traditions, their moral frameworks allow them to be. And when you have a country that's invaded, frankly, by a foreign people group, it doesn't matter what the people group is, but if they have various cultures, differing moralities or religions that question, the underlying presuppositions of countries, organic laws, of course you're going to have a country that changes. Of course you're going to have a pessimistic populace. So I think what we've seen here is mass migration does not bring our greatest strength. We've been sold this lie that diversity is our greatest strength. Well, actually, unity is our greatest strength. And that's true in the United States and also in Europe, that the values, the culture, the heritage, the history, the traditions, the religion that made that country what it is, it turns out that that is actually a integral fact to that country either being successful or a failure. So I'm not surprised when mass migration creates housing crisis that makes the next generation depressed, that takes jobs, that steals houses, that changes the system and culture and traditions of that country. And I think the answer to this is assimilation. If countries want to have other people come into them, the immigrants have to assimilate and adopt that culture. It doesn't mean you can't bring some food or some nice various cultural elements, but these countries need to recognize that they are unique and they have great attributes to them. And that being diluted, I do think, contributes to this just depressing nature of young people and them not wanting to buy property and have kids and pursue their futures.
Yeah. It's very alarming, and it goes right along with something that Elon Musk just retweeted. It's a post by Mario Nafal. He is the biggest X Spaces host. I've been on some of his programs to talk about South Africa and things like that. A very insightful individual. I don't believe he has a Western background, although I could be wrong. But he posted this, and Elon Musk retweeted it. It's got, let me see, 25 million views so far. And he says white fertility has collapsed. The rest of the planet didn't. And he says the generation that's now starting school is the first in recorded history that will grow up on a planet where people of European descent are a shrinking global minority. He says fertility across the Western world has collapsed below replacement levels and shows no signs of recovery. Italy's at 1.2, Spain at 1.2, Germany 1.3, Poland 1.2. We're talking about babies per woman. Canada 1.3, Australia 1.58, even in the U.S. 1.6. Meanwhile, you look at Nigeria, 5.2, Pakistan 3.4, Egypt 2.9, most of sub-Saharan Africa above 4. And then he says you layer this on top of the largest sustained migration in human history. Between 2000 and 2025, roughly 110 million people, it says, moved from the global south to Europe, North America, and Australia. UN projections showing another 200 to 300 million over the next 20 years. It says no previous empire, no previous century has ever seen population movement on this scale. The result is visible in every major city. This is a point I've been making for years. Native children are minorities today in public school systems of London, Paris, Amsterdam, Stockholm, Toronto, Sydney, most large American metros. The rest of the West is simply next in line. He says by 2040 to 2050, native-born of European descent are going to be minorities in the under 30 age group in every single Western country without exception. He says this is no longer a national story. It's the biggest demographic turnover the world ever witnessed. And it's happening in one human lifetime, and it has never been done before. He says the numbers don't negotiate. They simply arrive, one kindergarten class at a time until the old world is gone. And, he's looking at this through the lens of skin color, which I don't believe he's white. I don't believe he's European ancestry. But I'm looking at this, what did we used to call the Western world? Well, it was Christendom. As the gospel spread from the Middle East into Europe, it became Christendom. And then it was the free world as we stood up against communism. So now you have the people of Christendom, the people of the free world, literally being replaced by people from non-Christendom, literally from people from the non-free world. What does that mean? Well, I think it's very clear. This is a targeted attack on Christendom and the free world. It's an attack on Christianity and liberty and, of course, national sovereignty. And folks, we better get a handle on this before it's too late to reverse it. It's very alarming to me. I'm glad that Elon Musk is starting to talk about this. But don't worry, the EU to the rescue. Here we have the EU forcing same-sex so-called marriage on Poland. The outrageous European pseudo-court of injustice is going to force every EU government to recognize so-called same-sex marriages. A crazy case involving some homosexuals who, I guess, left Poland, got married in Berlin, and then they went back to Poland and demanded that their government recognize their so-called marriage. Apparently, they want to grab children somehow. Folks, this is really troubling to me. Poland obviously is a very Catholic country. They have stood firm against the abortion craziness, against the homosexual marriage stuff, but now you have the EU determined to force it on them. I find that very troubling. Speaking of this demographic crisis that the West is facing, Elon Musk is not the only person noticing. Some people in the liberal media are also starting to notice. I want to show you this little video from a New York Times writer. He comes from Pakistan. His name is Wajahat Ali, and he goes on this crazy rant about how terrible white people are and how great it is that brown people, as he calls them, are going to take over America. Listen.
You have lost. You lost. The mistake that you made is you let us in the first place. See, that's the thing with brown people. And I'm going to say this as a brown person. There's a lot of us. Like a lot. There's like 1.2 billion. In India, there's more than 200 million. In Pakistan, there's like 170 million in Bangladesh. Those are just the people there. I'm even talking about the folks who are expats or immigrants. There's a bunch of us. And we breed. We're a breeding people. And the problem is you let us in 1965. There were a few of us beforehand. But once you let one of us in, you know what happens with brown folks? Our grandmother comes, our grandfather comes, our uncle comes, our aunt comes, our cousin comes, our second cousin comes, our third cousin comes. Then we have kids, a bunch of kids. And then guess what? Some white women, the Western civilization women, the pure women, the American women, quote unquote, the Rust Belt women, the real women, they like some of us brown folks. We don't take them. They come to us. So we're embedded. We are everywhere. We are everywhere. I've traveled this country. I'm going to speak as a brown person. Brown people are everywhere. There will be a Patel motel or there will be a Desi restaurant everywhere. I want you to realize this. You have lost. Your story is a shitty story filled with misery. It's filled with bland chicken. It's filled with terrible, terrible dry ass meat. Your music sucks. All your culture sucks. Nobody. That's why the kids listen to black people and their music. That's why the kids love Latinos. Your parties suck because they're monochromatic. Our parties have better food, better music, better looking women.
Okay. Your culture sucks. Your country sucks. So we're gonna take it over. Really? That's absolutely crazy. Meanwhile, the Muslims down in Florida bragging about how taxpayers are going to be forced to fund their indoctrination camps. Truly a sad story. Listen to this.
شوف ليش في إقبال شديد على المدارس العربية والإسلامية الموجودة هون؟ هل لأنه الأنظمة الموجودة في فلوريدا اللي بتساعد الأهالي على الرسوم هذا هو السبب؟
Schools here are very much established than any schools around the country. And I've been in many schools. I've worked in many schools. And I have never seen such an establishment like I've seen here in Florida.
Do you mean like facilities or programs or everything?
Everything. Facilities. I've never seen buildings, real buildings, right? In Islamic schools. They're usually modulars, trailers, they're rentals. These are the schools that I came from. But here, alhamdulillah, we have about 5 real buildings, and we need to expand even more because of the influx of Muslims and Muslim families coming here.
There you have it, folks. You're being forced to fund your own destruction. Congratulations. Well, we know our hope is in the Lord, and God will defeat the evil. But stay with us. We're going to be right back after this quick break with Congresswoman Maria Salazar on what's going on in Latin America and some terrible things happening even here in our own country. Stay tuned.
Life's just better with VNI. There's purpose, there's passion, and there's a renewed sense of inspiration and optimism with every day. After all, we were founded on the power of possibility. Nearly a decade ago, a team of world-class scientists, formulators, and industry makers brought together biology, chemistry, and technology and created something unique and life-changing, while infusing a new sense of health and hope into the world. With every product comes an empowering opportunity to take charge of our destiny. One where we feel rejuvenated and energized, and everything else around us feels lighter, brighter, and full of promise. Let's live victoriously, together.
Welcome back to the Sentinel Report. Alex Newman, your host here. Thanks very much for joining us, folks. I grew up in Latin America. I'm very concerned by what's going on there, the ongoing takeover of the region by commies with help from key people in America, like the Biden holdovers in the State Department, like the Obama administration, like George Soros. It's an issue that has concerned me greatly for a long time. Today we have Congresswoman Maria Elvira Salazar. She is the U.S. representative representing my hometown, actually Miami, in the U.S. Congress. She's also got a new book out, Dignity Not Citizenship, The Truth About Immigration No One Is Telling You. She's very well known for promoting human rights. She is a longtime journalist, actually. She is a 5-time Emmy Award-winning journalist. She's a first-generation American, daughter of Cuban political refugees who came to this country after the communist takeover of their homeland. Congresswoman Maria Salazar, thank you so much for being with us today. Really appreciate it. I want to start in Latin America. You have been speaking out about what's happening in Guatemala. You posted on X and you sent a letter to Secretary of State Marco Rubio about the U.S. Embassy apparently threatening judges in Guatemala if they don't support the socialists, if they go for the conservatives. This seems very strange. This is, I understand, a Biden holdover serving as ambassador there. Give us the story. What's going on there?
Yeah, that's exactly right. You know, Biden had a very woke agenda, and they imposed that not only in the United States, but in the different countries that receive money or help. And what the stories that I've heard from the Guatemalans are very troubling. Our representatives at the embassy forcing them to talk about gender ideology and gender and everything that has to do with sex, or with ideologies that had nothing to do with the conservative movements and the conservative nature of the culture of those people. So, and then now on top of that, there's 2 judges who belong to the Supreme Court of Guatemala came to talk to me and explain to me that the American embassy was telling them exactly how to vote on different legislation. Since when? We do that. We're not in the business of telling anyone how to vote. We're in the business of spreading democracy and free market economy. So that's why I wrote the letter, and I'm very happy that Marco, who I happen to know personally, who is a friend of mine, who's my constituent, he lives in district number 27 in South Florida, paid attention to what I'm saying, because it's just basically common sense and basic politics. The United States is in the business of spreading democracy, free market economy. We're the beacon of hope. We're the shining city on the hill. We cannot be talking about sex.
Yeah.
Or
to
our allies.
I know this is an issue that's near and dear to your heart. Of course, your family comes from Cuba, had to escape the communist dictatorship there. But what's happening in Guatemala, what's happening in Latin America is, of course, much bigger. I know you're familiar with the San Pablo Forum, this network of communists. And it seems like the Biden administration and the Obama administration before were very friendly with a lot of the key players here. What is going on in Latin America, and how should the U.S. government be approaching this issue?
The United States should be very much engaged because the Latin Americans want us to be engaged. Latin Americans want to deal with the Americans, not with the Chinese or with the Russians. The problem is that the void that we have left since Ronald Reagan, when he started talking about Sandinistas in Nicaragua and stopping the spreading of socialism and communism in the Western Hemisphere, since that moment, the United States has forgotten the Latin America. This is like the absent father who's there, but the children are always begging for his attention. It's exactly the same thing. But then if the father is not there, then the stepfather comes in, the Chinese, and says, hey, here I am. Here's money. And that is the big dilemma that we have as a country. But I think that under the Trump administration, and thank you to Marco Rubio, we are paying more attention. Look what's happening with Venezuela. Look what's happening right now with what you said about Guatemala. I'm the chairman of the Western Hemisphere Subcommittee within House Foreign Affairs Committee. And that gives me like ample vision of what's happening vis-a-vis the United States and how much they, meaning Central and South America, want to engage. Nearshoring, reshoring, that's what we got to do. Take it away from China, bring it into the hemisphere, whether it's here or in Central America, and let's be a more prosperous neighborhood.
Yeah, it's alarming what has been happening, but grateful that there is now some attention being paid to it at least. Now, you've got a new book out that I think is intriguing. It's called Dignity, Not Citizenship, The Truth About Immigration No One Is Telling You.
Yes.
You have a number of specific policy proposals. Talk to us about what you think should happen with this issue that, of course, never goes away in American politics.
Never goes away. 40 years since Ronald Reagan, internet was formed after. It's like this problem is older than the internet. It's mind-boggling. How come having the strongest democracy in the world, the biggest economy, we've not been able to figure out what are we going to do with illegals and what are we going to do with the border? Now the border is sealed by by the signature of the president, executive order. That doesn't mean that we've passed a law sealing the border. And that's what we need to do. So we secure the border forever via legislation. And then we look inside and we take care of those who have been here for more than 5 years, do not have a criminal record. I've been working construction, hospitality, agricultural, dairies, slaughterhouses, healthcare, on the fields. Take care of those, bring them out of the shadows, and make them pay for their crimes. Make them pay a fine, and make them pay 1% of their salaries for 7 years plus another 7. And let's solve the immigration problem. And Trump is the person who can get this done. He could be for immigration what Lincoln was for slavery and Reagan was for communism. I have no doubt he will sign this law because he's the construction guy. He's a hospitality guy. He's the man.
Well, Congresswoman, you know you're going to hear the objections from a faction within the Republican Party. This looks
amnesty.
Like amnesty. So what do you say?
What does amnesty mean? What does amnesty mean? Amnesty is path to citizenship. There is no path. Amnesty is federal programs. There are no federal programs available to the illegals. Amnesty is E-Verify. It's mandatory. Amnesty is not catch and release or just gaming the system when it comes to the asylum system. I stopped that with the humanitarian campuses. No more catch and release. You have to come into a campus, stay there until we adjudicate your case and determine if you do have merit or not to receive asylum in this country. So what's amnesty?
Fascinating.
Oh, and seal the border. Yeah, well, the border is sealed. Yeah. And I'm codifying in law sealing of the border or keeping it. And there's a lot of billions of dollars to give to Border Patrol, new drones, more infrared cameras, better cars, more dogs, whatever it is there. But what are you going to do with the people who are inland?
Well, folks, if you want to learn more about that proposal, you can get the book, Dignity, Not Citizenship, The Truth About Immigration No One Is Telling You. From
in Amazon.
Maria
You can go to Amazon.
And it's on Amazon and everywhere else that good books are sold. Congresswoman, I want to ask you, too, you have been very passionate about this issue. You had H-Con Res 58, which passed the House, massive margin, 285 to 98, reaffirming that socialism is incompatible with America's founding principles. You talk about some of the horrible crimes perpetrated by socialist regimes. You've also got another related bill, H.R. 2080, Crucial Communism Teaching Act. You say that young people just don't realize the horrors of communism. Talk to us about this issue. Why are you so passionate about socialism, communism, exposing it, stopping it, teaching our young people the horrors that have been perpetrated in its name?
Because we lived it. I represent the city of Miami, which is the heart of the Cuban exile community and the Venezuelan community. and I know the horrors of socialism. It's not that I lived them personally on my skin, but my parents and my grandparents and my uncles and everyone that I grew up with, the neighbors, the cousins, everyone was suffering the sorrows of thinking that socialism was wonderful in theory, but it was miserable in practice. And the Cubans lived it. So I feel very concerned because, unfortunately, in this country, young Americans do not have a point of reference like we have in my community. You cannot recognize Black if you've never seen white. And that's the problem, that they have drunk the Kool-Aid. And they really believe there's equality and all this equality and equity and what is it that the other one is like?
Inclusion.
Egalitarian inclusion. Yeah, you have the same opportunities, but you do not have the same results. We're even level the playing field for the opportunities. But hey, if I want to have the same result of Jeff Bezos, you know, I would have wanted to invent Amazon. I mean, or I want to, yeah, I mean, so if we're all going to be equal, then I want to be equal just like Jeff. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's what a fallacy. But this country does give you the platform where you can have the same opportunity if you look for it, if you behave well, if you're responsible, if you have a code of ethics, if you have work ethics, if you go to study. It's not for free. And that is the fallacy of communism, where they make government God. And they have and that's one of the most dangerous aspects of it, is that they do believe that they have the moral high ground. They're the moral ones. We're not. Well, they don't have a monopoly on compassion. We're compassionate too.
Yeah. And
So-
to your point, we just saw New York City elect a guy who describes himself as a socialist, Zoran Mamdani. How did it happen that young Americans got to the point where they don't realize some of these dangers, and how do we go about fixing it?
They don't realize it because they have never lived it. They have never come to Miami and spoken with the Cubans. No, they're in Northeast, the guilt for the abundance. That's the problem. The more abundance, the more guilt. Okay, well, I'm not, why should you feel guilty for what your parents did and for the abundance and for the country that you live in? Okay, if you feel guilty, then join an organization, be a volunteer, give money to the church, give money to NGOs, just spread your wealth. But don't pretend the government's going to do that for you. So,
yeah, I know we're almost out of time here, Congresswoman. I do want to ask you about the attacks on liberty that are coming from our traditional allies on the other side of the pond. Secretary of State Marco Rubio just posted on X, the European Commission's $140 million fine isn't just an attack on X, it's an attack on all American tech platforms and the American people by foreign governments. He says the days of censoring Americans online are over. I mean, how does it happen that even our allies that we understood to be allies in freedom and free speech are now trying to regulate Americans? And how does the United States respond to this kind of situation?
Exactly the way Marco is responding, exactly the way we told them that they have to increase their GPS, no, not GPS, I'm sorry, that they have to increase from 2% to 5% the expenditures that they are giving to the defense sector, that they have to spend more money on their own security. And this is the same thing. It's just that it's really easy to be friends with the United States as long as they are abiding, or that they want us to abide by the rules, and we're completely different cultures. That's why we are who we are, and that's why they depend on us. And the free spirit that you see in the United States is something that the Europeans wish they could have, but they don't. Still, they depend on us. You know, is the eternal struggle with Latin America, with Europe, with the Middle East. You know, everyone loves the United States. Everyone wants to copy our model. It's just sometimes a little bit troubling, or it's too much effort to do it. Yes, that's I think that Marco is doing an incredible job and he's sending the right messages, just like Trump sent the right message when he came to the military expenditure.
Well, Congresswoman, before we let you go, are you optimistic that the United States can be made great again, in the words of Donald Trump? You think the next 3.5 years are going to turn some of these problems around?
I think we've always, throughout history, and I know that you are a scholar of the American history, at every turn we've had big challenges: the Civil War, the Revolutionary War, the Great Depression. The system always cleans itself, rectifies itself, and we find a way, because of the fantastic system that the founding fathers put together. We always find a way to come out of the crisis. And I do believe that right now we're in a very difficult, unique political moment when it comes to the division, when it comes to the penetration of socialism within the Democratic Party, which is something that concerns me, because that's a foreign ideology to the American way of life, to our core values as a country. But I do think that we know what we have, and we have the American exceptionality, and we got to preserve it. And that's why I'm in Congress. I was 35 years as a journalist. I miss being on the air, but we need to give back to the country that has given us so much, specifically my community, the Cuban American community. In one generation, look what we've done. Look at Marco Rubio. He's the same thing. Cuban American, first generation, born in the United States. Look where he's at. And myself, one generation, Congresswoman.
Amen. Well, we'll leave it there, Congresswoman. I want to thank you very much for joining us today. Ladies and gentlemen, the book is Dignity, Not Citizenship, The Truth About Immigration No One is Telling You. Congresswoman Maria Elvira Salazar, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to be talking to your viewership. All right, stay well. Yes, go to Amazon. And the truth about immigration that no one is telling you except myself.
Congresswoman, thank you very much for joining us on the program today. Really appreciate you sharing your insights and speaking out about some of what's going on in Latin America, especially the role that American subversives are playing in helping along this process and the dangers of socialism infiltrating our country. Really appreciate it. And you, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this quick break with more on the Sentinel Report.
In 1776, a nation was born, forged in the crucible of revolution. Brave men and women stood together fighting for freedom, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Throughout history, the spirit of patriotism has prevailed. The battles may have changed, but the values remain the same. Today, in 2024, we find ourselves at a pivotal moment where the call for unity, freedom, and a better future echoes louder than ever. Introducing Patriot Mobile, the wireless carrier that stands with you. We are committed to supporting the values that make our nation great. With affordable plans and reliable nationwide coverage, Patriot Mobile is not just a wireless service. It's a call to action for those who believe in the American dream. Because this year is not just any year, it's the most important year since our nation's founding. Choose a wireless carrier that shares your values. Choose Patriot Mobile. For free activation, use promo code Newman.
Welcome back to the Sentinel Report. Alex Newman, your host here. Thanks for being with us over the break. Folks, we have a very special guest joining us today. I've had the pleasure of hanging out with him on his program and on our program over the last few months, and he just is such an insightful commentator. He really has a unique take on what's going on in our country, and he's very popular too. He's got millions of subscribers on his YouTube channel. Every time I go on there, I get like texts from neighbors like, "Hey, I just saw you on Stephen's show." That's cool. Stephen Gardner, you have the wonderful Stephen Gardner Show. Thank you very much for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Alex. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So, Stephen, I have argued for a long time that the leftists, the progressives, even some of the well-meaning kind of normal liberals in this country are being used and manipulated. I mean, some of these people, we have them in our families. We go to Thanksgiving dinner, like, "Hey, I've known you for years. What in the world has happened to you?" And now we have a leading voice on the progressive side making this same argument. Obviously, Nicole Shanahan ran as Robert F. Kennedy's VP before he dropped out of that race and joined the Trump campaign. But I mean, she's squarely on the left side. I mean, she's identified as a progressive for a long time. I want to show you this clip, what she had to say to Allie Beth Stuckey, and get your take on it. So let's go.
Well, I think progressives spend so much time making an enemy out of conservatives and Christians that progressives end up getting fixated on that enemy.
Yeah.
Versus stopping and thinking more critically. And when they stop and think more critically, they actually have a ton in common with conservatives.
Yeah.
And that was my personal experience. That we are so much more unified than how progressives are being used right now. Progressives are being used in a way that I can only describe my mom describing what it was like being in China during the advent and the acceleration of communism.
Yeah.
A similar thing was described to me, happened in Russia as well, where all of these young people thought that they were these great leaders for freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And they were actually being used for a massive fascist takeover of the country.
Yeah.
And the same thing's happening in America. Progressives are being used, and their empathy and compassion is being used for a fascist takeover of the United States government.
Yeah. And they see it as the opposite, though.
Well, they're well trained.
Yeah.
So, Nicole Shanahan says leftists are being used, young, youthful leftists, their compassion is being exploited in the same way that Chairman Mao, one of the worst mass murderers in human history, manipulated the youth in China, in the same way that the Bolsheviks manipulated the youth in Russia before a massive orgy of death and destruction that resulted in the death of a nation, the crushing of people's souls for 80 years. What do you make of that, Stephen? Is that what's happening in our country?
I think so. I'll give you a couple of examples. Look at the Schumer shutdown that we all just lived through. In the beginning, a lot of America believed, okay, wait a minute. I guess if they control the House and the Senate and the White House, then this is their shutdown. But as time went on and the Democrats refused to pay the military, they tried to leverage hungry children against President Trump. They realized that, wait a minute, they're the ones holding up the majority vote. It's not the ones giving a majority vote. I think people started to have their eyes open. And wouldn't you know it, just out today on the Harvard-Harris poll, President Trump is up 5 points. This is a huge jump in a short period of time. So the American people see through that. On the climate change stuff, you literally have children in America right now that are saying, I don't want to have children because I'm afraid of acid rain. I'm afraid that the ocean is going to rise. I'm afraid that we are going to choke to death on polluted air. In reality, America has some of the cleanest land. I mean, you compare that to the pictures that I see in China. There's a reason they wear masks. They're not all still afraid of COVID. It's because the air pollution is so bad over there. So yes, our children, they are being gaslit. They are being manipulated. But we just have to continue to put out the truth. We have to patiently work with them. Here's another story that just came out, Alex. It was just proven that Joe Biden was briefed in the Oval Office that the border was porous and that millions of people were pouring in. And he said, I don't care. They then got every single Democrat to go along with these talking points. So the entire Democrat establishment knowingly lied to the American people and flooded our country with illegal immigrants, and then they were giving them all kinds of financial benefit. Why? Because they needed more borders. So our country's been sold out. Our youth have been sold out. It's up to you and I to educate them properly, and that's all we can do each and every day.
Amen. I'm shocked, I tell you. Democrats lying to Americans. No, I shouldn't joke about that because it's so serious. I mean, we're really talking about a very dangerous situation that's emerging in our country. Stephen, the great General Flynn has been warning now for weeks that America seems to be in the midst of a color revolution. And these young brainwashed leftists that Nicole was just talking about seem to be like kind of the cannon fodder, if you will. Do you think we're really in that dangerous of a moment in our country? And how does Donald Trump respond to this? Because, I mean, if he does what they want, just a vicious crackdown, then they'll be able to say, look, he's a dictator. See, he's exactly all the bad things that we said. How does Trump handle it? And do you think we really are in that kind of a dire situation?
I believe we're in a color revolution, absolutely. I believe that most of America is brainwashed. And I think President Trump would do well to explain what the action steps that he's taking a little bit better. I wish that he would spend more time saying, here's what I'm doing with tariffs versus attacking Jimmy Kimmel. But going back to your question, we're absolutely in a color revolution. Look at what they did with the COVID lockdowns. They literally convinced people to wear a diaper on their face, knowing that it didn't block COVID. Here's the proof. If someone farted in your presence, you could still smell it. So if that's getting through, you knew COVID was getting through. We found out that they lied about the 6 feet of distance. We found out that they lied about the efficacy of these vaccines. Also, they literally said, government is the solution when government is the problem. They then said, you don't get a stimulus check or any kind of financial aid unless you get this big pharma experimental vaccine. Oh, you can't have a job. You can't serve in the military. They literally destroyed the country with these lies. They're doing it right now. Look at what's going on with these Somalians that are stealing American money and sending it back to terrorists. Then you have Ilhan Omar. She went on some of the biggest news outlets over the weekend, and she literally said that the people of Somalia are the victims of this fraud. So wait a minute, the people that stole the money and then sent it back to their country, they're the ones that are suffering from this? I don't buy it, right? And I read just this morning, Alex, this really bothered me. There's actually schools in Minnesota right now that are taking down the American flag and raising the Somalia flag. That's what happens in a country that's been captured. We saw the same thing in the LA riots, that Trump had to send in the National Guard in order to protect California from burning itself to the ground. We saw people holding up flags from Mexico and Venezuela and Brazil and other places. Don't get me wrong, I love that America is a nation of immigrants, but when you are flooded with illegal immigrants and they're literally burning your flag in order to raise their own, something has gone wrong.
Yeah, clearly. And you're so right. I mean, those iconic images of like cars on fire and goobers flying Mexican flags with skull masks on. You're like, what? Is that even my country anymore? It's truly insane. Stephen, Congress has been, I think, to a lot of folks in the MAGA movement, a big source of frustration. You've got the Senate Majority Leader, we can't do anything if Democrats don't want anything done. We just got to, sit around. Maybe we'll do something after the midterm. We'll see what happens in the midterm. What do you make of this argument that let's just hold tight, let's wait for the midterm to come around, and then maybe we'll codify some of these policies that Trump has been asking for? Are you frustrated with Congress, and what do you think they ought to be doing?
I mean, you've got used car salesmen that pull better than Congress, right? As far as trustworthiness and popularity. So, but yeah, I'm extremely frustrated. My audience knows that on paper I'm a libertarian, but I just happen to vote with the GOP because I like to win, and I'm relying on them to push forward good things about Christianity, Judeo-Christian values, about the nuclear family, about treating everybody equal, regardless of the color of your skin. All of those things are really important to me. But I'm very frustrated with them. However, I will say over the weekend, I did read that Senate Majority Leader John Thune is pushing to have a group bill of 97, I believe, of Trump's appointees pushed through all at once, because what they've realized is, just like the Schumer shutdown, is that the Democrats are saying, wait a minute, Trump won because the vast majority of Americans love him. They love his policy and idea. They want MAGA. They want America to be great again. But then you have them, they're literally attaching anchors to every single person, every single policy, every single idea. They're throwing lawfare at him. I mean, it's just disgusting. But we're what? Almost 11 months in here in a couple of weeks. And the GOP is not pushing for single bills to get his executive orders pushed through. To me, this is such a disappointment. And I can see why people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and others get frustrated. Thomas Massey, neither of them are my favorite people, but I can just at least empathize for just a minute, because I sit back as a citizen that pays a lot of money in taxes and voted for this GOP, and they're not doing what Trump wants. So I'm very happy with President Trump. I'm very frustrated with the GOP.
Yeah, I get it. In fact, just before bringing you on, we had Congresswoman Maria Salazar on, and she was talking about how even within the Trump administration, there are people who are working to sabotage. The U.S. ambassador down in Guatemala, holdover from the Biden regime, is intervening to help the socialists win elections. It's in Congress, it's in the administration, it's in the fake media, it's absolutely everywhere. Stephen, you're doing a wonderful job exposing these people and shining the light on some of this. You have a magnificent YouTube channel, Stephen Gardner. Is that the best place for people to follow you and your fantastic show?
Absolutely. If you want to know what's really going on in Washington, D.C., if you want to win, if you want to learn about the wins of Donald Trump, this guy wakes up, goes into the swamp, and throws these monsters out every day. I'll keep you in the loop.
Excellent. Stephen Gardner, thank you very much for joining us. Talk to you soon. All right, folks, stay with us. We'll be right back with one more segment here on the Sentinel Report.
Your children are your legacy. Treat them as such. When you homeschool with Classical Conversations, they connect you with a local community of like-minded families who not only learn together, but do life together. They equip homeschool parents just like you, or grandparents, with the confidence to raise bright, observant students who have a lifelong love of learning. Please visit classicalconversations.com/LSM to learn more.
Welcome back to the Sentinel Report. Thanks for staying with us, folks. I'm Alex Newman. And for the last few months here, we've been featuring stories of families that have been persecuted and terrorized in some cases by so-called Child Protective Services. They have different names in different states: the Division of Children and Families, the Child Protective Services, CPS, different names. But it happens, it seems to me, pretty frequently that children from decent families, from good, God-fearing, loving families, find themselves ensnared in these investigations, sometimes are even targeted. And then you have, unfortunately, sometimes families with drug abuse and things like this where nothing ever happens. And unfortunately, there is a major risk to families across the country that they could find themselves ensnared in an investigation. In fact, depending on whose numbers you believe, it could actually be very, very common. Joining us today to discuss all of this and more is Bradley Pierce. He's a co-founding attorney of Heritage Defense. They're one of our partners here. I've been a member for years and years. It's a wonderful organization that defends the parental rights of Christian homeschool families across the United States against threats from the social services. Of course, he was homeschooled back in the late 80s through graduation. Then he got a degree in history and English from Baylor University, where he served as student body vice president. And then he got his JD, his law degree, from Baylor Law School. Him and his wife, they've got 11 children. And Bradley, it's an honor and a pleasure to have you on the program. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be with you.
Absolutely.
We actually just had number 12.
Oh, praise the Lord. That is fantastic.
Thank you.
We're trying to catch up, but we've got a ways to go. So, hey, appreciate you coming on, Bradley. And I know you're involved in so many good things. We've had you on before to talk about the Foundation to Abolish Abortion. Just really grateful for all the great things you are doing across this country in the legal realm to protect life and liberty and family and so many of the most important things out there. Bradley, you're involved in Heritage Defense. In fact, you're one of the co-founders on this, and we've been very grateful to be members for many years. Praise the Lord, we've never had to call you guys because we haven't had problems. But I know that's not true for a lot of people. In fact, the numbers are astounding. Talk to us about, I mean, first of all, is it really a risk that Christian families, Christian homeschool families should be concerned about, that CPS might show up at their door?
Well, it's something around our country. Actually, studies show that over 37% of children in the U.S. will be part of a CPS investigation by the time they turn 18. That's from the American Journal of Public Health. That we see from the Department of Health and Human Services. Just in 1 year, over 4% of children in the U.S. are part of CPS investigations. So that's just in 1 year, right? You do that over many years, you can easily see how more than a third of children get involved with CPS investigations. So it's something that is a big issue in our country. And the thing is, most of those people who are being investigated, most of those families are innocent families. You know, a lot of times people think, oh, you're being investigated for something, you must have done something wrong. And maybe kind of like in the criminal world, oh, someone was arrested, they probably did it. You know, a lot of times that's true. Um, but there is a presumption of innocence here. But with CPS, it's really the opposite. Over 92% of reports are deemed unfounded. Over 83% of their investigations where they actually go investigate families, over 83% are deemed unfounded, that there's no child abuse happening there. So there's a whole lot of families who are being needlessly investigated, not to mention those who are, who are founded but shouldn't be.
Yeah. And this is a really traumatic thing for people. We've had some parents on the program even recently who've gone through this. And eventually they got their children back, but it completely turns life upside down. Talk to us about what these investigations look like. I mean, I know each one is different. There's different circumstances, but I mean, what happens when CPS knocks on your door and a neighbor says, "Hey, the child was playing outside and I didn't think it looked good," or "Hey, I saw this kid get a spanking and maybe you should investigate." What does that look like when CPS gets involved in a family's life? And talk a little bit about the kind of the trauma involved in that, with the children being interrogated by a government bureaucrat they've never seen before. Just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's something that so their typical CPS protocol, no matter really how uh, unserious the allegations are, it can just be like you said, a neighbor can be like, "Oh, I saw them outside. I thought it was too cold outside to be outside without coats on, so their children didn't have coats on, so I called CPS on them." And no matter how unserious the allegations are, they almost always they want to talk with the parents, normally mom and dad, normally separately, to make sure their stories line up. They want to come into the home and do a home inspection, a home walkthrough, not just about what the allegations are about, but just a general kind of walkthrough of the home. Make sure that they have food in their fridge and pantry. Make sure that if they have guns, that those guns are stored in a safe way. Make sure that the home is child friendly, child safe, and those sorts of things. But then what can be the most intrusive of all is that in basically every case, they want to do interviews of the children. And in most cases, those mean private interviews of each child alone by themselves without any parent or even any sibling being with them. And that can be certainly the most stressful and most traumatic part of the interviews and of the investigations.
Yeah, I get chills just thinking about it. Some bureaucrat interrogating your poor terrified child. What's going on? Am I in trouble? So what do you guys recommend, Bradley, when something like that happens? God forbid you get that knock at the door. I mean, talk for members and also for non-members. Just generally speaking, what should a parent do? What should a family do? Especially if they're innocent. They're a good Christian family, just homeschooling, minding their own business. What should be the proper protocol, I guess, for a mom or for a dad who's facing that kind of situation?
Yeah, so for our member families, we just tell them, hey, don't answer any questions, don't ask any questions, don't really get into a conversation. Be polite. The CPS they have a job to do, they're doing it, and don't get angry at them, but just say, excuse me one moment while I get my attorney on the phone. Step back in your house and then call us as a member of Heritage Defense. You can get a hold of our attorneys 24/7 and get connected with us, and then we can advise you, or even you can put it on speakerphone and we can talk directly with the CPS worker right there. So that's what we have found to be the best protocol for a family that's not a member of Heritage Defense. Really, we encourage them, you know, have an attorney that you can call. If go ahead and think in advance, who would I call in this situation, and be ready to call them, because when you start kind of saying, no, you can't come in my house, no, you can't talk to my children, it's you don't have an attorney, they know you don't have an attorney, and they're going to try to threaten you or run over you. Um and whenever they have the threat of removing your children from you to hang over you, that's a very powerful tool to get you to do what they want you to do. And so having legal representation is super important for that. And also, if it's better to let the attorney be the bad guy, right? You be the cooperative parent, let the attorney be the one to say no, Because if you say no, it just makes you look more suspicious.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad you guys exist, Bradley. When I first learned of you guys, it didn't take me long of going through the website and seeing what you were doing to say, I think we need to be members of that. You know, we are, of course, a Christian homeschool family, and we know many others who are also members. We're very grateful for what you guys do. But talk a little bit about Heritage Defense, Bradley. Why did you guys set this up? What are some of the different services you offer to members, and how can people learn more?
Yeah, so we started in 2010. So we've been doing this for over 15 years now. And we were doing CPS cases before then, and we saw that when we could get involved very early in a case, we get them resolved quickly. But whenever families tried to, be DIY, do it yourselfer, which is great. I'm a DIY guy myself, but when it comes to legal representation, that's not the best area to be DIY. And so we saw a lot of times families, tried to handle things themselves, and they got way out of control before they, try to get an attorney involved, and it's much more difficult at that point. So we started this organization to give families someone that they can call 24/7. It's all part of your membership. You don't have to, you don't have to think like, oh, how much is it going to cost me? No, you're a member. You call us. We're there for you, and not just to call us, but even to go to court for you and to battle for your family. We get local attorneys involved in your state to represent you. That's all included with your membership with Heritage Defense. So that's $19 a month right now, or $190 a year. And so then, and even if families don't have a CPS worker at the door or some kind of emergency, they can even just call us and schedule a call with one of our attorneys and just say, "Hey, I've got questions about the law in my state," or we're trying to navigate this situation, and just get some advice, get some help, and some counsel with those things, and that's all included with the membership.
Yeah, and your website too is a marvelous repository. It's happened so many times. I wonder what the law says about this in my state of Florida. And you go and you've got already papers there, kind of explaining the lay of the land. Every state is different, ladies and gentlemen. Every state has different laws. So we have found it's really, really helpful to be involved. We are just so grateful for the work
And
that
that's
they do.
actually, yeah, we have the law and policy section on our website, and that's even if you're not a member of Heritage Defense, you can go to our website and create a free login and get access to all of that. What are the parental rights laws in all 50 states on over 24 different subjects, where you can go see what those are. And yeah, you don't even have to be a member of Heritage Defense to do that.
Praise the Lord. And folks, if you're watching us right now on TV or on the internet, you can see a little QR code on your screen. If you have a smartphone, just take it out, scan that little thing, and it'll take you right where you need to go to get involved, start working on this. It is open only to Christian homeschool families. So you have to be Christian and you have to be a homeschool family. Bradley, one of the questions I've gotten from people in the past when talking about this as well, I'm already involved in HSLDA, the Homeschool Legal Defense Association. They're great. We love them. We're members also. So why would I need something supplemental to that? Explain a little bit about where you guys go kind of above and beyond just, the specific homeschooling issues.
Yeah, so we love HSLDA. My parents were members. We're now members of HSLDA. They do a great job of defending your right to homeschool and lobbying for homeschool rights around the country. But a lot of times CPS cases arise for lots of other reasons. Like you mentioned some, like, so just some neighbor who misunderstands something, or disgruntled family member, or maybe you have a disagreement with a doctor or a hospital, or I could tell you so many different stories on so many different subjects that are not homeschooling. And so that's where we come in. We kind of pick up where HSLDA leaves off, and we cover all those other parental rights. We say that, hey, they defend your right to homeschool. We defend all your other parental rights as they make them under attack. So CPS shows up at your door. Give us a call.
Amen. And folks, we've got it right on our fridge, and it's really reassuring to know. So with Christmas coming up, if you're a grandparent, maybe your children are homeschooling their children, your grandchildren, and you're thinking what would be a good Christmas gift, this might be a good one to think about. I'll tell you what, we are just so grateful. Bradley, before we let you go, you're involved in so many other things. You're working to protect the lives of unborn children. You've been going around the country. I've seen some videos of you through Turning Point USA doing some apologetics on some of these key issues, including life. You're really a man with many different talents. You do a lot of different work. Talk to us about just kind of what animates you, what drives you in all these different areas where you work so hard.
I mean, ultimately, I'm a Christian, and I believe that as Christians, we should be obeying the Great Commission, and then also obeying the Dominion mandate, seeking to bring everything into subjection to Christ and taking dominion in His name and for His kingdom. And so, I see our liberties and the Christian family and life under attack in our country. And so I hope that what drives me is love for my neighbor, as Christ commands us to have, and most of all, love for Him.
Amen. Well, it's always an honor and a pleasure to have you on, Bradley Pierce. Thank you for joining us today, and it's great to know all the great work you guys are doing. And again, I'm very grateful for you guys at Heritage Defense for your work in defending Christian homeschool families. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Alex. Great to be with you.
Absolutely. You too. All right, folks, go check it out. It's at heritagedefense.org, heritagedefense.org. We, like I said, have been members for many, many years. We appreciate so much the work that they do. And if you've got children in your life or grandchildren, this is a great, great resource. Sleep easier at night, not having to worry about what you would do if the unthinkable happened. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Alex Newman. This is the Sentinel Report. We appreciate you so much. And God willing, we shall be with you again next week. Until then, thanks for watching. Thanks for all that you do. God bless you all.